Hi, welcome to another day of discovery. I'm Angie Anderson, and today we're at the Market View Arts Center in the lovely facility of the Pennsylvania Arts Experience. We're going to talk to local historian, author, photographer, Scott Butcher. Good morning, Scott.
Morning.
How are you today?
Doing very well, thank you.
Good. Well, I'm really excited about the topic of our program, which is the book that you will soon be holding in your hands that will introduce people to the historic architecture of Pennsylvania. Tell me a little bit about your book and what you hope it will do for the people who are going to know more about it after we finish this show.
Okay, well, I have a passion for historic architecture. Locally, I've been on the board of Historic York for almost 9 years now. And for several years, I've been writing about historic architecture. Actually did a book about York's historic architecture a few years ago. And part of that book never saw daylight. I shopped it around to a couple publishers and got rejected, and finally one accepted it, but they made me cut it in half. And the part that had to be taken out of it was architectural styles. And I really wanted to do something because there's such a diversity of architecture in central Pennsylvania. York County and beyond is just, we're talking about 300 years of architecture. And so one of the publishers that had originally rejected the architecture book came back and decided they, after all, wanted to publish something on the architectural styles. And so it's a book on South Central Pennsylvania architecture. It's Adams, York, Lancaster counties, as well as Cumberland, Dauphin, and Lebanon. And so I'm basically taking a tour both in words and in visuals of almost 300 years of architecture. So we're going back to the very early colonial, some of the oldest buildings in central Pennsylvania date from the late 1720s. So we start there as our basis and we go all the way up to present day. So you're getting a hint of the early colonial, the German settlers, the very simple type of architecture they built, and you're going all the way up to the roadside architecture of the mid-20th century and the modern and postmodern architecture of today.
And here we sit in this beautiful Market View Art Center across the street from one of our gems, which is the Central Market of York. And so it's great, as we look out the window here, we can see one of those specimens of this fantastic architecture that's all around us. But somebody told me recently that if you stand in the middle of York's Continental Square and you turn around 360 degrees, you can see 27 different kinds of architecture. Now, I'm not a student of architecture, but I've counted pretty many, and someday I need an architect to sit with me and say, that's Rococo, and that's colonial, and that's modern, and all the things that I would like to learn about. But this book will be a way to do that. And the really nice thing about having a local person who is telling the story is that when the book is published, and it should be published in December sometime, we will be able to celebrate that either as it's published or right before it's published on First Friday in December, which is Friday, December 7th, between 5 o'clock and 9 o'clock here in this very room at the Market View Arts Center in the Pennsylvania Arts Experience location. And people can, at that point, either pre-order or learn more about getting a book if it's not quite finished yet being printed. And they can meet you and learn a little bit about your passion for architecture and the things that you do when you're not taking photographs and writing books.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit, give me a little preview. When you're not doing those things, what is it that you do, and how did you come to love history and architecture so much?
Well, by profession, I do marketing for an architectural engineering practice. All right, so I've been exposed to buildings for more than 2 decades now. And along the way, I've really developed a passion for architecture, and it really started with a passion for history. Many years ago, I went through the Leadership York program, and one of my placements when I got out of Leadership York was on the marketing committee of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. And I got involved with writing visitors' guides. So I was photographing them, I was writing about history and attractions, and that really kind of lit a spark in me. And then I just started photographing the architecture and writing about York in like Pennsylvania Magazine and Showcase PA, and it just kind of, one thing led to another, and I ended up doing a book about postcards. Most communities in the United States have the postcard history books, and I did York's. And it's basically a book about buildings because most of the postcards from the early and mid 20th century were of buildings. And so there was a lot of history in the captions and the way York used to look. And then I kind of followed that up with a book about York County architecture, which is looking at the buildings today, sort of a moment in time. And so it's really combining a couple passions of mine. Originally, before I went into marketing, I wanted to be a journalist. So I'm able to keep that alive through my writing. And then photography is just something that I developed an interest in when I was in college. Took some courses in it, and really I've been photographing ever since I graduated.
Well, good for you that you could take your vocation and your avocation and your passion and create what will be a lovely full-color photograph book, 180 pages, that people can leaf through and learn about. And let's also say that not only is it a project that people can purchase and have as gifts for the holidays, the upcoming holidays, just for yourself, but it's more than that, because it combines art and photography and history. And here we are looking at Historic York as a partner, and also at the Pennsylvania Arts Experience. And all of those things combined make for a lovely way for all of us to be able to take all of the good things that York and our surrounding communities have and combine them and sit and hold it in your hand. And as a newcomer, I think you know that this program came about because I'm a newcomer to York. And when I came here, I started to ask people, what's that building and who designed it and what's the significance of this, or those kinds of things. And,
right.
And your book will educate me and lots of other people.
Oh, well, thank you.
So you'll be here from 5 to 9 on December 7th. And for those people who may be seeing this after the show, after the First Friday has happened, they can also learn more about the book through Historic York. They can Google you, which is what I did to do a little bit of my preparation. And let's spell your last name, Butcher, like Butcher.
Absolutely.
Scott Butcher. Easy to Google.
I always say, like the meat man.
Like the meat man. I'm infamous for Googling people, and when I did a little bit of research about you before I came today, I learned that you've written all these other books, and I want to know, where can I get them and how can I buy them as gifts for the holidays?
Okay. Yeah, I've done more than a dozen books now.
Really? That's amazing.
Most of them fall under the local interest category. Mm-hmm. Actually, the first book I ever wrote was a marketing book, because I had done a lot of writing in the 90s on professional services marketing, since that's what I do for a living. Mm-hmm. But after that marketing book, then I sort of transformed into the local interest books. So I've done 5 on York. Mm-hmm. One specific to the city. It's called York, America's Historic Crossroads, and it's a hardcover, sort of a photo legacy book, a lot of history in it, several hundred photographs of the city. Did York's historic architecture, we previously mentioned, the postcard history of York. One that really surprises me how many people like it. It's called Spooky York. Everybody loves ghost stories.
You know, isn't that true? I'm a little spooked by spooky things, but I do see people going on tours. Do you also give those tours?
I have given some of the tours, and that was sort of the genesis of that book. I was involved with Main Street York on the board, and we had a normal crew that always gave the ghost tours. One particular year they couldn't do it, so we didn't want to lose our fundraiser. So I started researching some local stories, and ended up I just got tons of stories and would share them on the ghost walks that we do, the Spooky York Ghost Walk, and then even got other stories around the county. And then when I was working with the publisher on the York Historic Crossroads book, my representative from the publisher that was editing my work, turns out she lived in York for several years, and she runs their paranormal publishing group. And she said, I want to do a book on York. And I said, well, here's my stories. You don't even have to credit me. Just make it yours. And it ended up, they insisted that I was a co-author with her. Her name's Dinah Roseberry. And so I've done many ghost tours.
Wow,
and
you are the man about the county, aren't you? You're all over the place. Okay, so I guess I would ask you 3 questions that might be interesting. What do you use when you're photographing? Do you use the same camera all the time? Do you use different cameras?
I think if you ask any photographer about cameras, they tell you as soon as they have money, they buy a new camera or a new lens. It's kind of an addiction. So I actually got started with film. And I was
That was a long time ago.
Yeah,
Scott.
that was a long time ago, and I was using a Minolta camera, and right there dates me because Minolta sold out years ago. So it ended up as we transformed into the digital era, I started with just a little point and shoot and worked my way up through a series of cameras. My first DSLR was a Sony. Sony purchased Minolta, so all my old lenses from my 35 millimeter worked on it, and I've since upgraded to, it's beyond a DSLR, a digital single lens reflex. It's now a DSLT because it's translucent and it's very technical. But what it means is technology is just, it's unbelievable, and it's changing really every 6 months. New cameras are coming out, and I can't afford to keep up with it.
Well, I hope that you get one for the holidays, a new camera.
I'll ask Santa.
Now, my next question is, do you have a favorite building in New York City? And if so, what would it be?
Well, my favorite building is actually just a couple down from where we sit right now. I love Central Market across the street.
I think we have the same building. I'm really curious to hear what it is.
Okay, yeah, Central Market was designed by Dempwolf.
Yes.
And J.A. Dempwolf was the most prolific architect in New York's history. But my favorite building was actually designed by the federal government. It's on the corner of Beaver and Philadelphia Street. It's the old post office building. So it's a Victorian Romanesque. Today it's the Lighthouse Youth Center. And it used to be in the old days before the federal government had the General Services Administration. That's who owns and manages all non-military buildings. It used to be the Department of the Treasury had responsibility for architecture. So there was a position called the Supervising Architect of the U.S. Treasury, and that person designed that building here in York. It was originally the Federal Building and Post Office, and it was built in the 1890s and really only operated as a government building until 1911 when a new post office was built on South George Street.
That's my favorite building in the city, and I'll tell you why. When it rains really hard, I get my big golf umbrella and I stand across by the White Rose and I watch the rain coming down on the building, and then the gargoyles at the top, all that water comes spitting out of their snouts, and I just love to see that building. So on rainy days, I go to the White Rose.
That's great.
I have a little adult beverage, and I watch the gargoyles. They're not drinking. They're
That's right.
But that's a phenomenal building. And is there a photograph of that in this book, or is that in previous books?
It appears in 2 of my York books.
Okay.
Yeah, what's interesting about that building, and you mentioned the gargoyles. It's that building and Calvary Church out on West Market Street are the only 2 that still have their original functioning gargoyles.
And just a little architectural background here. Tell me where gargoyles came from and how that all worked.
Well, gargoyles are a decorative element in architecture, and they serve a very practical purpose, and that's to get water away from the foundations. So that's why they project out from the facade. They collect the water, it runs through them, it falls, maybe a foot away from the building. And that's to help keep water out of the basements of these old buildings. You also see on this old post office building, they have grotesques. And grotesques can be human or animal formed, and they're just unbelievably ugly. And they're architectural embellishments that go back to really medieval Europe and some of the churches, the cathedrals that were built. And the concept was they were to ward off evil spirits. In America, they don't really serve that purpose. They are just a decorative element.
We want those evil spirits, so when we do the ghost tours,
that's exactly right.
Money's worth.
That's exactly right.
I wanted to follow up. You were talking about Main Street York earlier, and I wanted to mention that is today the modern version of our Downtown Inc. Main Street York morphed into Downtown Inc. And they are our friends who do these lovely tours of the city, and they do architectural tours, and they do history tours. And anybody who really loves the city or wants to learn more about the city so they too can love it with us, should really look into what Downtown New York is offering in terms of First Friday activities, in terms of some of the special activities that will happen here. If you want to learn everything that you need to know about how to have a good time on a First Friday, you go to downtownnewyorkpa.com. That's the website, and they can learn about your book, they can learn about tours, they can learn about all the other fun things that happen in our community, not just on First Fridays, but throughout the month. And you mentioned earlier, and I wanted to remind everybody that on December 7th is also First Friday, but it's First Night, which is the night that we traditionally, we're very, very happy about this. It's the night that we traditionally celebrate the lighting of our Christmas tree and the arrival of our friend Santa Claus. And I've been really good. Have you?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
I
you're going to
believe
get a camera, and I might get a puppy. I don't know. That's what I'm asking for. But it is First Friday in December is when Santa arrives, and we'll have a lovely time downtown. Please, everybody come and shop local. We're all about shopping local. Support our local merchants. Come and see our beautiful history. Look at the churches that are opening their doors to people so that they can see the beautiful architecture inside as well as outside.
Absolutely.
And hopefully they'll come and meet you and learn about your book and pre-order and purchase some for gifts for the holidays.
Absolutely, and they'll at least be able to get a sneak preview of the book. We have the draft here.
Sure. So it was my pleasure to talk with you today.
Thank you.
And I'll look forward to seeing you on First Friday, and hopefully people will enjoy your book and you'll enjoy success from it. So
Thank you so much.
have a great holiday. Thanks a lot,
You do the
Scott.
same.